Hey, this is Crispy, also known as Crispy Wonton, and some of you may even know me by my real name, Anton, and you're listening to the Soju Sessions, episode 10, on the Soju Talk Nation podcast feed. For me, music has always been a universally shared experience. Melodies, rhythm, and lyrics elevated a positive sense of self as I discovered new sounds and stories in K-pop. As K-pop grew in global success, so did my desire to connect with others. For much of its history, K-pop was niche. Information and conversation were scattered on the internet, a challenge many fans around the world face when seeking community and discussion. I was lost and rudderless, floating across a sea of YouTube edits, Reddit threads, and the occasional translated news report. Until I found Soju Talk. Over the past 2 years, Doug, Warren, and Anita have built a place of found family. The nation has grown into an inclusive community where self-expression and celebration can flourish while being home for all of the latest news in Korean entertainment. I started the Soju Talk Nation podcast to explore the deeper stories that we bring into our fandoms. I'm incredibly grateful for the crew joining me to share how their unique histories inform their K-pop journeys. Coming up, my conversation with the crew from early 2021. We talk about their shared college experiences, their friendship, and what resonates with them in K-pop. This is Doug, Warren, and Anita. Repackaged. Joining the Soju Talk Nation today is a special guest, 1/3 of the Soju Talk crew, a man who also goes by the musically talented alias known as Jetlag.
Aww.
Warren!
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Welcome. How are you?
Thank you. No, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me, man.
No, of course. This was kind of something I had an idea to do a couple weeks ago when you raved about Chungha. And then Doug had mentioned Warren actually wants to be on the show. It's like, you know what? I think we can make that happen.
Right, yeah, because I was talking to Doug, and I was like, I kind of want to pop on sometime and talk to Crispy about Chungha, because I heard, and you were kind of hyped about it too, and I was like, oh boy, maybe you could have a conversation about it. I don't know,
Yeah. No, I had that exact same thought. So
right.
We're gonna be getting into Chungha, but this is kind of an unfiltered conversation. This is let's dig into who Warren is just for the nation.
Oh boy, all right.
But we will start with kind of the overall how we all got here kind of situation. So we're gonna talk about friendships, and so you, Doug, and Anita have known each other since college, and
right,
have shared many great K-pop and life adventures with us on the main show. But what does their friendship mean to you and has meant to you over the years, whether that's in K-pop or in real life?
I mean, okay, we're diving straight into the chummy stuff. I mean, Doug and Anita, I think, are obviously at this point one of the closest friends that I'm still maintaining out of the high school, college years. One thing I noticed after I graduated college is that I grow distant with a lot of people, because if you don't make an active effort to start communicating with them, for obvious reasons, nobody talks and they grow distant, and I kind of didn't want that to happen when Doug graduated. Doug didn't want that to happen, because for those of you guys who don't know, Doug graduated, I think 2 years earlier than me and Anita, because me and Anita are in the same class. Doug was doing grad school when you met him, and we didn't want that to happen. Doug didn't want that to happen. We did have a group chat, which was At one point it was just all club stuff, student organization, and then like hanging out and whatnot. But like once he moved to the East Coast and we were stuck in the Midwest, it quickly became like, here's a meme, haha, very funny. Have you seen this Twice video? Oh, that was cool. So like that was kind of sad. And then like at one point, I think it was Doug who had the idea of starting the podcast. And obviously you guys know the story after that, but it's even with my other friend groups, I don't talk to them like very regularly. And with like Doug and Anita, I obviously I talk to them every week. We do a lot of like, hanging out before and after that a little bit. So at this point, oh man, this is kind of cringy, but but they're they're one of my closest friends,
Oh, let's go. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what we're here for.
Oh,
we
man.
love it.
Yeah.
We love to hear
I should have told you guys that we're a show window friend group, like don't talk at all afterwards.
Yeah. You guys aren't actually friends. It's all a business transaction.
No. We actually hate Doug. We all hate each other. That's what.
Oh, so that conflict is real. I see. Man.
But yeah. Great people. I'm glad to be, in this little group with them.
Yeah, and it's special having those friendships over the years. And like you said, like it's very easy to lose touch with the people you grow up with, especially into adulthood. Everyone just finds their own way, gets a job, moves away.
Right.
And it's hard to maintain that chemistry you have with friends.
Right. And it's a lot harder if you're just texting people and like sending people memes, right? Like, because Doug and Anita and my friendship was more around like us hanging out in Doug's apartment and like talking about K-pop. And the way podcast kind of simulates that a little bit is, like we obviously talk about K-pop, we watch it separately, but like we talk about it, together. And while we do have that, like, obviously we do have a thin layer of we're, recording this thing that's going to go online publicly. It kind of mirrors a lot of what we did back in college. So I think, it's helped a lot of that.
Yeah, there's definitely a natural chemistry you guys have together. So I wanted to know, like, when did you notice that you guys had this natural chemistry, and how did that translate over to being on the mic with everybody?
I guess it was a while back, like a year or so into becoming friends and whatnot. I was talking to Doug, and I think this was the point where I started opening up a little bit. And I was, like, I was saying some weird crap, and Doug was like, why are you this weird? You've never been this weird. And then I was like, it's your fault. Like this, I'm your friend now. Too bad. Like, and at that point,
no
like
take backs. It's it.
Right. It's too late now. You got the full package. Like, so at that point, I think I noticed our banter was getting a lot more friendlier and a lot more memey. And I think at that point, which was like a year or so into our friendship, I was like, like, I don't know, like if we ever do stuff online, I think it could be kind of funny, really.
Yeah, no, and it does show, like, just between you guys. So I've been following the K-pop the podcast since 2019 summertime. And
oh wow,
you guys have definitely had like a very established like friendship and rapport, but then you've definitely grown like as the years have gone by, and especially this year, just considering everything with being isolated, but also like finding a connection with people. So I guess in that span of doing the show, how has your friendship grown together, either relationally or through music?
Well, I'm not sure how I translate music into this, but as with our relationships with each other, I can definitely say I'm a lot more open with these guys, like, because like back in like, like even earlier in the podcast, and like a couple of years before we did that, the way I present my opinions, I'm naturally one of those people that are afraid of like how people think about my opinions, and that's something I've changed as a human being while doing the show. Is I've learned how to kind of wrap it up nicely into this nice little package for people to kind of consume, and that obviously it's primarily for our listeners to consume, but also talking with Doug and Anita and our relationship with each other, I think presenting these opinions, not just about K-pop, but like other things going on in our lives, I think has definitely gone deeper in that aspect. On the other hand, Anita Anita's not really an aggressive person, if you guys haven't noticed yet.
She's a flower,
But with Doug and myself, we definitely do have arguments here and there about stuff about the podcast, structure, stuff about the Discord server, and these have become, I think through those conflicts, I've learned a lot about Doug, a lot more than when I was doing student org stuff with them. And obviously it all ends well. We, no fight has ever gone to the point where I'm never gonna talk to you again. Obviously it's all worked out. That's why we're still doing this this show. But while doing that, I think I feel like I learned a lot more about the way he thinks, and the way he approaches things, which is nice because already when we were starting the show, I was already like, I know who Doug is. I know how he thinks. Little did I know I didn't. And now I think I have a better understanding.
Yeah, and it's oftentimes we grow the most with people we either disagree with or have those small conflicts. We can always have our small disagreements, but it's all about coming back together and kind of growing. And just it's really nice to just hear how you guys have kept that bond together. And it really does show that you guys are all making each other better. I know that sounds really sappy, but it does come across that way. So I do want to say that as a very just sincere thought, and it's kind of the reason why me speaking for myself, I come back to the podcast and I enjoy the company of everyone because it does feel like a found family. It does feel like home. So
I'm glad. I'm really glad because I think that's what that's how I think we try to set ourselves apart from other podcasts or other people who do media in this sphere.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought you said something really interesting about seeing K-pop differently from different points of view and just having different perspectives on things between you, Doug, and Anita. So I kind of want to set up this next section about K-pop, starting off with a Star Wars analogy. Okay. Because I know you're a big Star Wars fan, and this hopefully will pique your interest. So Star Wars recently launched a new era in print storytelling, the High Republic.
Right.
And it takes place about 300 years prior to Episode 1, and it really focuses on the Jedi at their height and kind of furthering the storytelling and furthering the relationship the Jedi have with the Force. So each Jedi sees the Force in a different way. So one connects with the Force as if it's music.
Oh, okay. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, and then another would see the Force as a stormy, chaotic sea, right? But then riding the currents and the waves of how the Force connects and intertwines with everything that it touches. And then another is a deep-rooted, tall tree stretching out into the sky, but on a singular leaf.
Oh, okay.
And this is very explicitly named this way in the novel, and I pulled this out specifically because I thought about you guys, the three of you, and how there's the music side of things where it kind of flows. Not that any one of these examples relates to any one of you specifically, because I feel like you guys all work in harmony with each other. But there's the chaos with the sea, but then there's also the groundedness of the deep-rooted tree.
I do think I bring in a little more chaos sometimes. Just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, I'll bring that back up in a minute. But
okay.
So going off of just the different ways that we can see music, or the different ways that we see the things that we enjoy. What do you bring as far as your story into K-pop, hip hop, and just music in general? Because I know your background in music. And what details do you focus in on most?
I guess the way I think, I guess that goes back to the way I approach these songs that we're reviewing, right? And a lot of it goes into the perspective I have on music in general. Because I grew up, I didn't really grow up. Maybe 6 or so years ago, I started reading a lot of like reviews and like music critics reviewing albums, music, that kind of deal. And I wasn't well, to a certain degree, I was obviously interested in the scores they give, but I was also interested in the perspective they bring. Because every time I read those things, I would learn a lot about, well, I would learn a lot about their perspectives in terms of like, oh, like the narrative structure or like the way the song is written or the production or even just the background and the context, the way music is released. And I thought that was just very neat how like knowing about all that, reading about all that, it kind of gives you a different perspective on how you listen to the music. Like for instance, for instance, the only example I can think of is Reddy's 50K, which is really grounded upon his experience with Show Me the Money and how that boosted him into fame. And then when all the bubbles popped, you know, he was like not really popular anymore, and then he ran out of money. And then like thinking about all these contextual, you know, background stories that you would pick up on a, you know, that I would have read on a review. I start to think about music in the big picture, like how that fits into the, you know, artist's discography and their career, and that kind of deal. So I think to a degree, not to a degree. I think very much I focus on that a lot more than Anita and Doug. I know that Doug focuses a lot more on the career and their industry prospects as well. I stray away from that a little bit and look at their discography as an entire catalog and even a whole art piece. Like at this point, Twice, for example, with like how many mini albums do they have?
I lost track.
I know, right? Like
so many. If it makes me a bad once, I'm sorry. I've lost track.
No, you know what? You're good. I'm also a bad once here.
All right, sick.
But I think with the entire catalog of music they have, that already itself is like another way to view their art and like the imprint they're making on the industry. And I like to think about stuff like that a lot. So yeah, I like to think about stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question a little bit?
No, it does. It was excellent. It was a beautiful answer. And I wanted to go like a little bit more into that. So
yeah.
Definitely with the way Doug talks about music, it's very here are the details of how it's industry related, because that's kind of like one of the main reasons people come to the show is to be informed, right? Then Anita has more of the emotional connection, like where was she when she listened to this music? Oftentimes it's at an earlier period in her life, so she feels that retro vibe, as we have discussed many times. But for you, the way it seems like you are more about the overarching story of what music is supposed to be telling you.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, no, I definitely focus a lot on like what its role is in the bigger picture, as well as how it's, you know, like being portrayed as a song itself. I hope I'm not getting too deep here.
No, you're doing great. Yeah, keep it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I do like to think about, like for example, last week we were talking about the aespa remaking Yu Young-jin's song, and then like my definition of a good remake or something like that is a reinterpretation and something where the artists themselves can add something more on top of like the original artist's like story and like narrative and the track itself, and the emotions that the original song gives, and like with stuff like that in mind, I go into listening to aespa's track, and then, you know, like the rest of, you know, what I said on that episode. So yeah, I try to focus a lot on the context and like the overall package, not just how it feels in the moment, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it makes excellent sense. And I also want to like tie this into what I know about you as a Star Wars fan. And to me, it makes complete sense now, because Star Wars is this generational mythology, right? And granted, certain movies aren't executed the way people would love them to be. It still tells an overarching story, a mythology, a modern myth, if you will.
You know what? That's why I love the prequels. Even they are questionable quotes from the movie.
That's what I'm
questionable
saying.
dialogue. But yeah, I mean, it tells the story of Anakin, you know? Like,
Yeah, so it's where you start, how you finish, and then where you want to be in the future. And I feel like your approach to music is definitely reflected in everything you have to say on the show. And it's a really good mix with everything that Doug has to offer, and then all the emotions that Anita brings in with her points of view. So
totally.
yeah, no, I love that.
Yeah.
So now going on to more current events on the show. I'm just gonna label this spice chart, Soju chart. It was chaos. Please explain. This is your time. Please explain what happened.
I have blocked Anita from all my social media accounts. I declare a war on that child.
Oh God, Anita, I'm so sorry.
No. You know, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I didn't expect Doug to put Chung on first. I didn't. Oh well, I guess spoilers alert if you guys haven't listened to episode 125. Yeah, I mean, obviously Chung didn't make it because I was the only one that put it in the chart at all, I think.
That was insane. Yeah. I was like, what is happening? I have no idea what's happening. Please.
No.
Help.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so after recording the week before, so 124, Doug was like, you guys are like pretty much holding the chart hostage. And both me and Anita, we were like, I don't know, man. Like, because at that point, I had already stopped listening to Chung's X. I'll be very frank. I had gone back to listening to other songs that are similar to that nature. So like, I was listening to a lot of Black Skirts and Mid-Air Thief to begin with. Anita was listening to completely different music, and we were both like, like I'm not sure if it'll make first again next week. This week, I honestly, before I started listening to the songs that were on the list, I wasn't sure myself if I would put it on first. I didn't expect myself to, given like how much I had been listening to it a lot less. But then, I wasn't very much impressed with the other candidates this week. So I still ended up giving it first. Clearly, obviously not the case with Anita, who I forget what she gave first, but I think it was Espa. Dreamcatcher? Okay.
It was Dreamcatcher. I was just like, what is happening?
Yeah, I don't know. That came out of nowhere. I mean, to be frank, I haven't listened to the Dreamcatcher song at all ever since we discussed it on the show. I don't know, man. Like, never been that big of a Dreamcatcher fan, So like, I haven't gone back to it. But I know that's not the case. That's generally not the case with Doug or Anita. Where like they often, go back to the songs that they're listening to. They go back to the songs that we've already discussed, and it stays in the playlist for them. For me, unless I really like it a lot, it rarely does that. I know DD Dance. I've been listening to it quite a bit. Not gonna lie. Shout out to DD Dance, great song.
Shout out to Wiz Ones and your Universe song.
Shout out to all the people who are still salty over the Fiesta. I'm just kidding.
You know what? You want to do a special episode one day? We could do like an unfiltered Fiesta, what happened, kind of documentary style.
A Fiesta debate. I'd be.
If, you know what? I'll moderate it. If you and Doug want to get on each side of the podium, you can make that happen. Just gotta schedule that.
I will be frank. I was listening to Panorama again before I listened to DD Dance. I was like, maybe I was a little too harsh on Panorama. It's nice. It's good. But I don't know what Fiesta. Anyways, going back to the chart. That's I forgot what Doug had in his chart. No.
So the chart ended up being Dreamcatcher Odd Eye at 1, CIX Cinema at 2, and then Eyes 1 DD Dance at 3. A lot of math happened. A lot of things were happening. I was so confused by the end of it. But ultimately, so Koala and I had recorded earlier today, and we actually talked about our feelings about the chart. And it was mostly confusion. But if we step back and like look at what the segments are supposed to represent, right? It's supposed to represent kind of a changing opinion about music and also representative of the people who listen to the show. And we thought, like, you know what? Honestly, for the entertainment value, you can't do any better than this chaotic nonsense that just happened.
It was none of it was intended. We didn't. This wasn't supposed
And
to
that's
be.
the thing. It was genuine, which is even more beautiful.
Oh.
Just man. So honestly, you guys just keep doing you. And we even said, like, if you guys do this more frequently, yeah, I think it gives a lot of people a lot to say. So I think you guys are doing great.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I'm never gonna try to like put a chart on just for the funny factor, but
Right.
I do think honestly, I feel like I often feel like I am not the chaotic one, and it's mostly Anita. I'm actually not even joking about this one because I can make usually a good prediction about what Doug is gonna like. I know that I follow a couple set of patterns in terms of like which song I put on first and second and third. Anita, besides the fact that she likes music that sound retro, I have no clue. Like sometimes, like Dreamcatcher Auto on first, dude, what?
Yeah,
Like
that was the biggest curveball I've heard in a long time. So
top 10
just,
anime betrayals of all time, just right there.
Got to make that YouTube video.
Watch Mojo.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
All right, so let's like focus in on Chungha a little bit because she's no longer on the chart. But you had a lot of like really good things to say about Chungha and her career, her experience, and musically where she's at with this pre-release. So what spoke to you most about this song, and what do you hope for as far as this style of music that she'll be doing in the future?
I mean, to be frank, I don't expect her, or I don't really hope for her to continue doing music in this field, I guess, because obviously her main thing is dance pop and like really energized, dance pop music, which I think is what Bike is gonna be about, or Bicycle, I forget. And obviously it'd be nice if she keeps putting out music like this, but I'm not totally sure how much of it'll happen. But in terms of the song itself, I felt like it was a different side of the coin, and that was really nice because, as you and I have both said, I really think it's not really about her ex boyfriend or whatever. I think it's about her ex fans, people who were her fans, and that really makes me think about her position in the industry and how she views her career so far, and how she's gotten to the point where she is at the moment. Because I remember like one of the lyrics that really stuck out to me in the chorus was something along the lines of, the path I walked so far was actually not a flower path, and that felt like a clear reference to the whole like, oh, walk your flower path kind of meme that was going around back in Produce 101 season 1, while cleverly referencing how she views her perspective, and in that aspect, obviously I felt like as an artist she's gonna have a lot to say, especially given that I think it's fair to say that she has been the most fortunate of all the people who have come from IOI. And this to me felt like a look into that. So on top of the entire like, oh, the production is good, oh, like the song is written well, that whole layer of like my own narrative is injected to a full degree in this song. That to me was like very impressive.
Yeah, no, totally. And it really shows you the depth that she'll go to with like song lyrics and creatively putting together this piece of art, right? And showing you more than just her as a performer, but her as a cogent person who has feelings and emotions, and that her experiences have painted who she is up until this point in her career. Everything you said about walking that flower path and then people kind of leaving her at certain points in her life and her career. Knowing what we know about Chungha and the way that she values friendships and relationships, just with all of her idol friends and just being on different vlog shows and variety, Do you feel like this can also be a referendum on the industry, in that with IOI we had such high expectations for everyone, and
Honestly, yeah.
and then nobody succeeded the same way, right? So then obviously
Right.
fans would fall by the wayside for several people. I mean, Sejong, we all love Sejong, but I feel like Gugudan is no longer a thing. So it's like people kind of leaving them behind, whether that's the company, whether that's actual fans. But do you also see this as a message to her peers,
To her peers.
or with her peers, I guess, like including her peers?
To a degree, I definitely would think so. Because, right, because like you mentioned, when Eyes One was... Sorry, not Eyes One. Jesus Christ. Sorry.
IOI, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, we're good. It happens. It's fine. Did I say Eyes One? I hope I did say Eyes One.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay.
But yeah, right. Back when IOI was first
Banded?
disbanding,
Yes.
right? Disbanding. People had a lot of high hopes. Everyone, like, I know for a fact I was a lot less invested in K-pop back then. But I had picked up on who IOI was. I think very, very, very was the big track that, put everyone's eyes on them. And then immediately, that was their last title track before they disbanded. So a lot of eyes in general were on like, oh, like what's going to be next? Oh, what group are they going into? And I think for a lot of people, people expected it to be like, oh, it's going to be an easy gateway, easy segue into the rest of your careers because you already have this, so much of this popularity. And clearly that's not what happened. That's clearly, like you mentioned, Sejong, obviously is going, through a second phase of her, well, I guess third phase of her career. I probably wouldn't say Yeonjung is the most popular in Cosmic Girls, and that kind of deal. And given all that, I think the song does represent her peers a little bit too. Whether they intended it or not, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But I think because of that shared experience, I think it does say a lot about, former members of IOI.
Yeah, no, that's it's a very pointed thought, right? To kind of just expand into, and it really just kind of goes into like the power of K-pop as an entertainment industry, but also like the globalization and like how it reaches other people. So kind of our closing thoughts here before we wrap everything up. I did want to ask you, so
Yeah.
Korea as an entertainment industry, whether it's music, movies, TV shows, has become so widely globally accepted, right, and popular, in so many different ways. What is your hope and direction for Korean culture being celebrated moving forward?
Hope and direction for Korean culture and media. Oh man, I feel I definitely don't feel qualified to answer on this one.
So tell me how you feel, or it doesn't have to be intellectual. It's just, how do you feel being a Korean citizen?
How do I feel, dude? I'm worried as heck. I'll tell you that. That's what I'll tell you. I mean, to a degree, I know that it's never gonna keep going up. It's not. At a certain point, it's gonna level off and it's gonna fall down. And the way I view that a little bit is the way Japanese culture and media was accepted back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, where right now, I feel like we are kind of, Korean media and culture is kind of going the path that Japanese media and culture kind of has. And obviously, that probably might be because I went to an elementary school with a heck ton of Japanese kids. But, to a degree, it also kind of reminds me of experiences I had where like people are like, oh, yes, Sony, Toshiba, Mitsubishi. Not sure what Samsung or LG is, which, sorry, that's obviously not media or culture.
But it's brand recognition for that specific country, which then translates into like your awareness and visibility.
Right. And I think everyone's kind of aware that the soft power of Korea has definitely gone up in the last decade. And it's a big deal for Koreans. They eat that crap up like there's no tomorrow. Like back when Gangnam Style was a thing.
Oh
Like
boy.
back in like what 2012, 13, something like
10
that.
years ago. Can you believe
Dude.
that?
Yeah, we're old, man.
Oh,
I
God.
remember tuning into the Korean news every now and then on YouTube or Naver or whatever, and there were so many like part segments that were about, oh, there's a club in France playing Korean music. Will you look at that? Like people are so excited. And even now, even this many years after, that's still the case. That is still the case. Where like BTS, for example, like I know a lot of like middle-aged fans of Korea aren't super into the narrative or the music that BTS brings, but like they're really, really big a fan of the industry impact that they have had, and the way that represents Korea. Same with all the sports players, same with Parasite, that kind of deal. So on one end, I'm glad people are on board. I'm glad everyone, who enjoys Korean movies or dramas or music or smartphones or whatever, I'm glad they like it. And I hope it doesn't pass away like a fad, and rather it just kind of, plateaus off at a certain degree, and has its niche little place in mainstream culture. That's my hope, I guess, which isn't really the most positive, like, oh, I hope it becomes mainstream culture and everywhere. But I think realistically speaking, that's the best anyone can really ask for.
Yeah, no, and I would say it's positive. I would say, I mean, for the most part, like, you're not saying it's going to be crashing down anytime soon. I mean,
Oh, I hope not. I don't think so. No. Yeah.
so I mean, we're saying that it'll reach a point like a peak, and then hopefully it'll just level off and not like go any worse. Which I would say that's a hope.
Yeah.
I guess for me, like I've in the past like couple of years, I would say like 5 or 6 years, I've become more aware of just like being Asian American in America, right? And like being of mixed culture. I grew up in the United States, but I did immigrate here when I was 2 years old. So
Oh, wow.
I am from the Philippines, but I still consider my culture as American. But I never really understood like how to celebrate and how to kind of bring forth the visibility of like Asian culture, right? Because
Gotcha.
I mean, the only thing we have is like anime, and then like the occasional like Japanese or like kung fu movie here and there. But now it's come
Right.
to the case where no, like it's important to celebrate heritage. It's important to celebrate the eclectic histories of everyone, especially coming into Western markets, and making money is always a good thing, So
No, of course. And I always thought that I noticed that was happening a couple of years ago, where like people who especially Asian Americans were they were taking on Korean culture or whatever as a medium to kind of help them identify together as Asian Americans. Like I think one that really stood out to me was all the memes on subtle Asian traits. And then like when I'm like talking to like when I was talking to a lot of Asian Americans on like or Asian people in general on dating apps, a common topic that we discuss or common stuff that really gets brought up often is Korean dramas or Korean movies or K-pop, and I'm glad that we have that kind of middle ground where everybody can come together. Because don't get me wrong, anime is great. I used to be a gigantic weeb. I'm not really that
used
much
to be?
anymore.
Come on, you're in a safe space, Warren.
I would like to let it known that I don't have any body pillows at the moment. I mean, I didn't when I was in high school. That joke didn't go anywhere.
It's okay. No, it's fine. I understood the joke. I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Anime is trash, and so am I. Let's go.
Let's go. Man.
No. But it's yeah. So don't get me wrong. Still love anime. Still think it's a great part of this culture. But I'm glad we have a lot more faucets, if you will, because diversification. Anime is great, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
And if anything to open up like the visibility of Asian culture, right? So if it's through anime, if it's through K-pop and Korean entertainment, that's a really good entry point for a lot of people. But now it's yeah, I would like to say it's a part of the responsibility for people like you and me and the generation coming behind us to be like, oh yes, like this is the entry point, Japanese and Korean culture. But guess what? Like people from Thailand got a dope culture too. People from Vietnam,
That's true.
They do cool stuff too.
That's true.
People
That's
from
true.
The Philippines, we're Asian.
There's a lot more room for diversification, and I think one step at a time. That's the way it should go. I will admit, I'm not super into those people. Cause I can't name names obviously, but I know a couple kids who used to go on dating apps and like only pick out people who they think are like really into K-pop, and they're like, oh, like I'm Korean, you like K-pop, like like are you turned on, like that kind of deal.
Yeah,
that's stupid. Don't do that. Like Jesus.
Yeah, and that goes with like a general sense of ignorance with everyone, right? That's not like specific to like one like group of people. It's kind of just shortcuts that people make about other people, and hopefully a lot of the stigma and those things go away with just more visibility and exposure to what Asian culture can be. Right. All right. Well said. So Warren, thank you so much for joining me today. This was an amazing, longer than expected conversation. Yeah, no, this is awesome.
No, thank you for having me. I'm always down to talk. So if you want me on again another time, dude, I will gladly. Well, I mean, you should probably bring on Doug and Anita too. So
yeah. Well, so spoiler, I have plans. I'm mapping things out. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, I will await very patiently, see where it all goes.
All right. So moving on to, I would say like the best section now. What do you think, Koala? Yeah. So on last week's episode, we did have Warren. Oh, I had Warren on a one-on-one interview.
Sad.
Well, it was a timing thing, Koala. But we kind of dug deeper and talked about, some introspective things about life, K-pop, friendship. This section is Doug Talk, and I wouldn't say it's going to be as deep or introspective, but we're going to get to know Doug just a little bit more. So, Doug, I'd like to lead off by saying, how have you been over the past year during the pandemic?
So here's the thing, right? The pandemic, stuck at home particularly a lot. You got a lot to think about, right? I feel like I've been asking more questions than finding answers, right? Like, I feel like, all right, we're gonna be stuck all the time. I love being home. It's great, right? We get to hang out, do stuff. At the same time, I feel like I think more recently, because we've been in lockdown for like about a year now. It's like I really realized like I lost like a year of my life doing nothing, right? Like know what I mean?
Yes, the existential dread is heavy.
Yeah, I've been getting some existential dread. Now I have I would say the pandemic's been difficult on like a mental sense, particularly for a lot of people, including myself. It's like you're stuck here, you're like unsure of yourself, and because you can't go anywhere, you can't like really like figure out things other than being trapped in your house a lot, right? So it's but overall though, not too bad, right?
Yeah,
it's fun being home, but at the same time, it's like kind of want to get my life going still, like I want to go do things.
Want to just like see the world, get outside. Yeah. It's rough. But I will say, just like having the show and having the community has been a really big help to myself personally.
Yes.
And like, not to say that there's two different Dougs, but like the guy on the show is a very welcoming, warm, and like a stabilizing figure, I would say, for a lot of listeners. Like, I know I'm speaking for like everyone right now, but to me personally, like it is really nice to have that sense of routine that you bring, and Warren and Anita every week. So I do want to thank you for that.
Yeah, I feel like on the Discord, I'm way more chaotic and just troll a lot.
Really? What do you mean? No idea. Oh man. Koala, what? So how do you feel about the pandemic as well, and how do you feel that Soju Talk and Doug and just like knowing him this past year, how has that changed or helped you?
Oh, I've been like lurking before the pandemic, and the pandemic like actually brought me like closer to the whole community because I had nothing to do at all, staying all at home. So I just engaged more. And I mean, in Germany, it was not as bad as in the States because we had like a 3-4 month time window where I was able to meet friends and do shit. But it, like, the beginning still was like boring as hell. Now I'm stuck at home again. It's just really exhausting. I don't know how staying at home can be so exhausting, but it just is nowadays. I'm so sick of it, and I actually just want to go out again and do stuff and even go to school. Like, okay, please just let me do it. I don't want to be at home anymore. I'm sick of it.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do at home, right? Like when you don't have a choice. It's like it's nice to be like, oh, I'm a homebody. I like to be at home, but also I have to go to school or I have to go to work or I have to like live my life like 4 to 5 days out of the week. And like my own time is my time at home. But when you're stuck at home all the time because you don't have a choice, just I mean, like Doug said, it's mentally draining and it does wear on people. But yeah,
For sure.
like,
Cabin fever is a real thing.
right, just it's rough. But again, like happy to have everyone here and happy to like get into like old interests that I've had over the years. So I think I showed you one time on voice chat my Pokemon card collection. I actually had organized it and like bought brand new like sleeves and cases for it.
Oh,
So it's like super like fancy and clean now. And I looked up prices for a bunch of cards. Let's just say like it's only going up. And I got a
Yeah,
good,
because
yeah,
we got a hype right now for Pokemon cards.
yeah, it's wild. But yeah, so like collecting things and like old collectibles have always been like part of my life, and it's just nice to like revisit those things because we have so much time during a pandemic. Doug, what are some things that you've collected over your time and like history as a person?
collected many a thing. There's like, let's start off. There's like, I'm gonna preface this by saying only collect things if you have expendable income. Do not waste the money you need on real life things on collections because it's not worth it, right? Take care of yourself before you can buy things, right? That's the main thing I want to say. That being said, I have collected many a thing since I was brought into the world many a year ago.
Yes.
I've collected a lot of different cards, right? Baseball cards, Pokemon cards. I even during the pandemic, I started a Michigan rookie football card collection, but they all had to be autographed.
What?
I dumped too much money into that.
Damn.
It's kind of legit though, and I got like a it's not signed, but I have a Tom Brady rookie card. It's ancient, right? Like, and then once I was younger, a little bit older, I mean, I collected wrestlers because I was big into WWF in the 90s. You know, a lot of 90s kids were really into that because I was really cool. And then, okay, I think the biggest collection, though, is definitely the K-pop album collection, right? I think I've spent the most money on that. I want to say, though, with all collections, buyer's regret is definitely a thing, right? Like, there is a thing called like a collector's itch where you're like, you see this thing online. You're like, I need this so badly, right? And you're like, I'm searching for it. I'm hunting for it. The thrill of the hunt. And then once you get it, sometimes you're like, like 6 months later, you're like, I really didn't need this, right? And now you're just looking at it. To be honest, if I wanted to like boil down my K-pop album collection, I could probably get rid of half of these. Like, I'm gonna be really honest about this. On the brighter side of things, at least I can say that I helped support the artists that I liked, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's just so many albums in here, and it's like, was it worth? I don't know.
I mean, you make a good point about supporting the artists, right? Because that's like one way we can directly support them and hopefully keep them afloat.
But the thing is, that's kind of a crap justification, right? Like, it really
is.
It really is, though.
I mean, yes.
So you proposed to me we're gonna talk about collectibles. So I looked up like the psychology behind why you want to collect things, right? Because I'm interested to know why I want to collect things. It seems like a lot of it has to do with like physically manifesting memories of certain times in your life. That's like the main driving factor. I kind of agree with that. At the same time, I feel like if you have expendable income and you like to collect, it's like a double negative because then you're just gonna buy things you don't need, right? It is what it is, though. Like, the thing is, all right. So things have monetary value. Like an album's gonna cost you X amount each time. But at the end of the day, things like K-pop albums do not appreciate value at all, right? Like
Right.
photo cards might appreciate value, but the albums themselves, they print so many of them that it's not gonna be worth more now. Like I have like the first Girls' Generation album. It's still the same price that I bought it at, right? Like 10, 12 years ago.
The only albums I know which like rose in price were the NCT albums, but now they are reprinting them.
Yeah,
So the price for those
special
would go
edition
down.
ones or limited ones, but like a base album, it does not appreciate in value. So if you're gonna buy it, you literally have to buy it because you want it, right? I'm kind of weaning off collecting albums, K-pop albums. I keep saying this, right?
And yet,
keep buying. Honestly though, I really feel like once Eyes One ends, let's assume that they do end in a couple months, I don't think I'm going to buy albums other than like an IU album whenever she releases one. Like I really don't think I will. Because I'm moving on to new things now, right?
yes, these things.
I've been collecting the vinyls lately. That's been kind of cool, and I like that because it's a lot more slow pace, so I don't have to feel like the need to buy them. But the problem lately has been this anime thing, right, Crispy?
Yeah, let's jump into it. So, well, let me set it up. So, over the past like 2 weeks, Doug has shared with us his growing and now topped off experience with anime. I think he's getting to that point where it's like, oh, this guy's into it.
It's fun.
Doug, so with anime, aside from watching and reading manga, there comes collectibles and things that you can support and supplant your need and hunger, your desire for something physical in this world. Care to share and explain what you've been doing?
There's an anime figure abyss, right? There's an abyss of anime figures where there's like an unlimited price to them too, right?
Yeah.
And once you're an adult, so if you're a teenager, do not spend a lot of money on this. It's not worth it, right? Go do something better with your money. Buy your parents something, right? With being an adult comes adult hobbies, right? No,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm a stripper with this hobby or something. Hobby meaning adult level money hobbies, right?
Yeah.
That's what I have started to collect these anime figures, and not just like go to Toys R Us and buy a $30 action figure one, but like really high detailed nice ones, right? I guess the plan is to collect the characters that I really connected to through my anime journey, and eventually when I got my own house, got like a nice room, we'll set up some glass cases, put them in it, right? It'll look legit, right? Lock it so that if I eventually have kids, they don't break it. But these are like display pieces. They're not even figures anymore, right?
Yeah.
It just feels cool because I remember growing up going to like comic book stores and things like that back in the day and seeing these figures and thinking they're so cool. And like now that I'm an adult and I can start to collect them, it feels kind of cool, right? Like I guess that's the main motivation. Also, like they just kind of look nice, I'm looking at Saitama right now, One Punch Man. He looking pretty fresh over there, know.
Yeah. You're saying a lot of like really like interesting, like amazing things. I want to try to piece it together. So I'm going to bring us all the way back to the balancing game, because when you compared vision and hearing, you would want to keep vision. And from our conversations in the past and things that we've talked about, you're a very visual learner.
For sure. 100%.
And then you had talked about collectibles and the psychology, manifesting memories, being nostalgic for something, right? And with that, there's also this idea of, well, not idea, but like a very real physiological response of serotonin, right? When you get something pleasurable, just a serotonin kick, right? Essentially. Well, Well, I guess like do you feel like you're aware of kind of all the mechanics of your emotional journey of watching an anime, looking for the figures, but then also being transported to that point in your time where you did feel very nostalgic to growing up with this type of culture in your life?
I don't think I'm completely aware, but it's definitely what's taking place. Um, I would say like I feel like now that I have funds where I can spend on things that aren't just like necessities, it really feels like me being the like a kid again at the toy store and looking at like the glass cases and being like, I'll eventually get some of these, you know?
Yeah.
And I definitely think that's what's going on. At the same time though, I I have to be careful because if I'm not careful, like I'm just gonna buy too many and I don't need enough. So my strategy has been put it in the folder or put it in the cart, put it in there for 3 weeks. If you still want it after then, sure, you know, as long as it's reasonable. Like I ain't
Yeah.
gonna. I'm very fiscally responsible. But if it's like if you could afford it and it's fine. If it's still there in like a month or so and you still want it, sure, be my guest, right? As long as you can afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's another thing. Like it's not only to be nostalgic, but it's also like it's a good way to express the things that I like to people. Because like, there's this Saitama thing here. My relatives are like, "That's pretty cool," right? And I'm explaining it to them, and it's just like a conversation starter too. I think.
Yeah. You always, I mean, a lot of the things that we're interested in are founded in wanting to form connections with people
Yeah,
and trying to share that experience with someone else, right?
I was thinking about the anime figures versus the K-pop albums lately, right? The
Hmm.
main difference is like this figure, you see it, it's just cool, right? It's a figure, it's detailed well. These albums are just like paper books, right? And
Yeah.
like because I'm a visual learner, like yeah, the books are cool, but like, does anyone really care about the photo books unless they're like really into the game? I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just a question I had.
Yeah. There's also a separation of reality, right? Where
Mm.
if someone sees a K-pop album or like pictures of like cute girls, it's like not to say that there's a cringe factor in it, but it's one of those where it's like, oh, those are real people. It's like, oh, I don't know them in real
Oh, that's
life,
a good point. I agree with that.
right?
I
But
agree with
then something that's animated, something that's fictional, something that's seen potentially more as art, like an art piece, right? Then there is that ability to like form a different type of conversation around why something exists and why you have something.
that's kind of true if you think about it. There's like all right, both of those things are kind of like I wouldn't call them hard taboo, but like K-pop and anime are both kind of taboo things still in the American mass media market, right? I would say, especially in American culture, it is less weird to like this cartoon character and get a figure than it is to just like get a giant poster of someone like an idol's face. I think
Yeah, I
maybe
agree with that.
because like liking a character versus liking a person who you can't meet are two totally different things. I think.
Right, right. Koala, you're here.
Hmm.
Hello.
Mm-hmm.
So you watched anime in the past when you were like much younger, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel like your fandom and experience with anime has translated to who you are as a teenager, but then also like your fandoms in other places, specifically K-pop?
So I would say anime was like the first step for me to get more into like internet culture and fandoms in general. Because I don't know when, but like my cousin was the one who like first showed me some totally legal places to watch all these animes,
Totally legal.
of course. And I know that like for the first half of the year, I was binging everything. An unhealthy amount of binging might have bring problems with it. I don't know yet. But like anime was pretty essential for like my general personality on the internet. Because I don't think I would be that invested in like different social medias and fandoms if it was not for anime. Because now I'm not that big of an anime fan anymore. I watch like the big movies and animes once a time. But now it's obviously more focused on K-pop. But I I can like see for both fandoms, how they like, I don't know, how could you say that? How they, what is the English word? German brain.
Is it more like the similarities in how you engage?
Yes, right. We have a German word for that. I don't know the English one.
Yeah.
And it's pretty interesting. Of course, I was a fetus back then. I don't think like my memory is accurate of all the things that have happened, but it's interesting to see now how I like move around in the internet and am a person in this K-pop fandom compared to how I was in the anime fandom.
Yeah. And I think not to diminish like your experiences when you're younger, of course, but like our memories change over time. But what makes those memories stick, or at least matter to us most, is how we emotionally engage with those memories when they initially happen, but then also like what we remember about them. So like the idea of nostalgia, right? Or the idea of like being transported to the time when you were a kid in a toy store, like what Doug had said. So yeah, there is definitely an emotional component to like our fandoms, whether that's K-pop or anime. I know for me, I wasn't completely aware of this until I was a little bit older, but I didn't realize the reason why I was such a fan of like anime and then like K-pop later in my life was kind of that desire to wanting to see an Asian person represented anywhere, right?
Ooh,
And
I like that.
yeah, because like you don't think about it when you're younger, and I don't even I would say like I didn't even think about it until like I was in my 20s. Like wow,
That was a time ago.
thank you. That was like just like looking up and seeing like, oh, that person looks like me, regardless if they're Japanese or Korean. Like I'm Filipino Chinese, but I'm still like an Asian person. So I guess what I wanted to ask like both of you to kind of like put a pin on like the anime like discussion. What do you feel like the impact culturally seeing someone who looks like you means for your desire to want to be part of that culture or part of that fandom, whether it's anime or K-pop?
Such a good question, bro. Damn, I'm impressed. Damn. You know, before I got into K-pop, right? And before I even went, so I got into K-pop in like 7th grade or something, right? But even through there, it's just like casual, whatever. Before I went to college, I did not have like one Asian friend growing up, and I did not speak any Korean outside of like a couple food names, right? My correlation into connecting with my heritage is directly linked with my involvement with K-pop, right? So for me, this like getting into K-pop and still being into K-pop has been such a journey in learning about my heritage and stuff. And like the fact that I'm like pretty semi-fluent in Korean now is kind of ridiculous to me. If you had told me that when I was like 15, I would say you're completely like lying. Like it was at a certain point I think growing up where I like resented the fact that I was Asian versus being white in my community, because like we were so, it was such a white area, because I was like, oh, I'm the token Asian, right? Like that's just my identity. But it's become something like to be proud of as I've grown older, and it's maybe I'm getting too deep, but like that's like been the story so far, and it's been really cool.
No, go deep. It's also something that's happened, that's shifted in the 2010s, right? Where like the
Yeah.
beginning, all people knew was anime and K-pop in the early 2010s. But then as Asian Americans and Asian American cinema grew, people wanted more. People wanted to be represented more. I know there was a really big shift like between 2016, 2017, when movies started to come out with certain types of people, like different people. I can remember specifically like Crazy Rich Asians or The Farewell. I think that's like 2018, and there was just
When was Train to Busan?
2016, I want to say. Yeah, so like mid 2010s, where there was like kind of an awakening, especially in the U.S., where it's like, oh, there's a lot of Asian people in America. We make really good things. How come we're not seen more? And especially in the West Coast, where there's just a lot of like there's a higher population of Asian people on the West Coast for obvious reasons, but it's one of those where we didn't really see the agency or power we had over making that shift happen for ourselves. And I feel like for me, it's been a really important and like milestone experience just in my life, accepting and celebrating Asian culture. So when the popularity of K-pop happened in the past 5 or 6 years, it was a really important thing for me to want to be a part of and included in. So I know we're speaking on the side of the United States, Koala, and just how things work in Western media. But I want to get your perspective. And you've told me this in the past, but what is your experience like in your little town in Germany, being an Asian person?
I don't know. I wouldn't say that I have like any Asian friends. It's more like people I know, but we're not friends. And there's like there has never been an Asian kid in my class, if I remember correctly. Yes? I don't think I'm forgetting anyone. So it's been similar to Doug's experience. Just Germany in general is very conservative about some topics, especially like looking at the history and stuff. And like anime and K-pop and the whole fandoms and shit just were a way for me to like experience different culture than what I'm experiencing at home, which is Vietnamese culture, and at school, which is the German culture. And I remember me being like 12, 13, something like that. And I was like really happy when I heard some of my friends were like, oh, I enjoyed that music video of that one artist, because I was really happy that they enjoyed a part of not my culture, but like the whole broad culture, Asian culture, and
People
that they
that look
enjoyed
like you,
it.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was just really important that like anime and K-pop also took off. So it was nice to see that other people started to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Even though in my like my general friend group, I don't think any one of them actually enjoy anime, but they don't enjoy K-pop. I know that.
Yeah. And it's these experiences that we internalize, right? I mean, on the surface, like we coexist and we have to adapt to our surroundings and our environment, whether that's like being surrounded by like Europeans and Germans, or like Doug, like growing up in the Midwest and being surrounded by white people.
I'm from Jersey.
Jersey, that's right. I forget you went to school in Michigan.
High school was when we had zero Asian friends, because I went to a really white high school.
Yeah.
Elementary school, though, from 1st to 8th grade, shout out to the Filipinos. They essentially adopted me. Like, I was like a de facto Filipino for a while, bro. Because, like, you know, that's like the Asian kids to stick together.
For sure, man. Oh,
Yeah.
God, those are, yeah.
Because I went to Catholic school, even though I'm not Catholic, and like a lot of Filipinos are Catholic. So,
yeah,
like,
for sure.
that's why they were my homies growing up.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, what's up, Doug? You want some pancit? Want some
Oh,
adobo?
we had TV yesterday, fam.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. That was dope. You
Oh
killed
my
it.
god.
Oh man. Yeah, so I guess like putting a pin on like the rest of like our cultural experiences and everything. I would kind of end on a light like topic. K-dramas.
Oh,
So Doug.
expert in the room. It's not me, but there's another. I'll speak to the ones I've watched, though. You know.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, what have you enjoyed recently?
All right. For some reason, people on our Discord don't like Itaewon Class as much as me. But like,
I like
really
it.
liked it. You know, I thought it was great. The other ones, my other favorite dramas, Hotel de Luna. There's people watching it right now on the Discord. And if you're an IU fan, double positive, right? My favorite like straight up dramatic drama is probably Sky Castle. I thought that was crazy because it really exposes the it dramatizes it, but like the cutthroat nature of Korean high school politics and getting your kid into a good school. And a lot of the themes they cover are just extensions of things that have happened in real life, just like they accumulate all the crazy stuff together, right? And then the Reply 1988 drama, I thought that was incredibly good because it's not only like nostalgic for an older time in Korea, but each episode seemed to address like very specific topics, like the protests at the time, or back when it was really taboo to marry someone with the same last name as you, things like that.
Yeah. Koala, have you seen any of those that Doug mentioned, and did you have like the same? Any of those dramas have the same effect on you?
I've watched Itaewon Class and Hotel de Luna. I've not. I think I have watched a different Reply series. I'm not sure though. I think it was a different.
You gotta watch that, fam.
I know, but like I'm watching Penthouse right now, and I'm
thing.
yeah, it's the same vibe. So I will watch Sky's Castle afterwards, and yeah, if Sky Castle is about the same as Penthouse, it's really good. It's of course dramatized, but like, and it's nice to see. It's nice to watch something different than the typical melodrama romance.
It's like
stuff.
no chill at
all. And Crispy,
Yes.
which dramas have you enjoyed in the past?
All right, so right now we're watching Hotel de Luna together on the server. So Malfiar, one of the mods, organized us together as the drama club, and then he put out a couple polls. We all landed on Hotel de Luna. And I'd say like this past 2 weeks of watching it together and then having a discussion about it in chat has been like a really fun like book clubby feel of like how to like experience like these stories and like the shows. I don't. Who's the lead female? I forget. Someone explain.
I don't know.
Ijeon? I don't know. I
Oh,
think that's her name.
okay. Yeah. If you have joined us on the watch along, I paused for a second because I remembered her name. Her name's Ayu.
Oh, that's what it was.
And she's gorgeous and beautiful. And you will get my commentary. I will just say that.
My God.
If you join us on the watch along, you will have amazing commentary.
Here's the thing, like, as much as like I'm a fan of IU, the drama's just good, right?
Yeah.
It is.
The best way to describe it just feels like Alice in Wonderland going on. Like there's like a entire time, right?
Yeah, that's real good.
I think that's like a really good way to explain it. Like I'm not gonna burn any of the plot, but like it's magical. There's ghosts. There's action sequences. There's flashbacks. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on, and it's a you're gonna have to suspend a lot of disbelief to watch this one though.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you know what's gonna carry you is all of her outfits. I think she
Yeah.
had 25 or 6 outfits in the first 2 episodes.
The fashion's nuts, and I think this is like peak acting for her, at least at this point in her career. She like acts her butt off the entire series.
Yeah, like she really carries
I'm like
it.
so impressed by her. Like she's obviously a great singer, but like that her acting is actually this good and so captivating. Oh,
Like if you see her behind this like her normal real life IU stuff, she's just kind of quiet and derpy, right? Like she's not like serious at all. And then this acting though, like she has to put on so many different masks to get to the places she's getting in this drama.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really just like it just shines just like how much like the attention is on her, but then at the same time how she like fluidly goes between like the different.
She can handle the pressure for sure.
Yeah. Gosh, oh, man, IU. Yeah, this turned into IU Sim session. That's cool.
Feel the energy.
Oh man. Okay, so kind of to put a wrap on everything. I do want to talk about Reply 1988 because I still have not seen that one, but that's one that's interested me for a really long time. And just like everything you said about its historical context of that period in time in Korea, but I also feel like that's indicative of Asian culture in general.
For sure.
And it really just like aligns with the themes of what we've been talking about in our little Doug Talk section. So going off of that, just like the different storytelling mediums, whether it's anime, dramas, or things that we read, how do you feel like it's affected you personally today and kind of moving forward into your cultural identity, Doug?
I think all of these mediums that I watch are good because I get to see situations that I don't get to live in my real life, whether they're realistic or not, right? And what you learn through these characters is whatever choices they make is irrelevant to my own life because I'm not in their shoes, right? But it leaves one thinking, what decision would I make in that point? And I think that's the good thing with storytelling, good storytelling at least, is that you're left thinking like either that was such a good decision, I would have done that, right? Or you're like, man, I can't believe they had those consequences. I definitely wouldn't have done that. And either way, it's stimulating you to think about like your life in perspective of what you're seeing on the screen.
Yeah, really well put, Doug. I mean, so complex, right? Just like the different experiences that you may not be able to live for any number of reasons, and yet we are so emotionally attached and connected to good storytelling, as you said. Koala, being the youngest person here in this group, and not to say that these stories will affect you more than Doug or I, but you have yet to live certain periods of your life that are told in these stories. How does this kind of give you a roadmap to just being a better person or making certain choices in your life?
So I don't know whether all of these like plots and storylines will like affect me in a conscious way. I think they will in an unconscious way. So I won't like actively like think about different situations and things that many characters have done, but I think they have a big impact on how I like see the world, because there are like many dark animes, dramas, series, movies, which definitely have made me think a bit more about how I would have maybe done it in their position, even though it's probably very unlikely for me to be in that position. Oh my god, speaking is so hard. I think the best example would be Extracurricular, what we've watched together, Crispy, because that show in general just showed me a complete different like life, which I could not imagine for myself, and just interesting just the what ifs, because I still have so many years going forward, and I will have to eventually make many opinions. What my brain choices. That's how you say it. Choices. And even though if I will make bad choices in the future, which will be the case for many things, I believe, I will still like have that input of different characters who are completely different from me, on which I can reflect with.
Yeah, really introspective of you, Koala. Wise beyond your years, I'll say. Joining the Soju Talk Nation today is a special guest. Typically the voice of reason, but most recently an agent of chaos on the main show. The retro vibin' main dancer of the crew and literal flower, Anita.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the show, Anita. How are you?
Really good. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's sunny in California.
Oh, that's nice.
It's
nice.
very warm. I think it was like 80 degrees yesterday. So
wow.
Yeah, just just doing my thing out here. How's your part of the country doing?
Well, in the Midwest, still have a bit of snow. But I think the weather is looking pretty good. Got a little bit of sun today too, so
that's good.
Maybe spring coming soon.
Yeah, it's a blossom, right? All right. So getting right into it, we know you from the Main Show podcast with Doug and Warren, and I wanted to ask you just off the top, how did your K-pop journey begin, and how has it changed over the years with Doug and Warren in your life?
Yeah. I think I've mentioned it a little earlier, but very, very briefly in the podcast. But I actually discovered the genre K-pop and all that through a friend way back in beginning of high school, I believe. And yeah, so it was mostly very, very contained. Like I didn't really talk about it with other people throughout high school, and then until college, I kind of found a group of friends that also were into that. So that was kind of the beginning of knowing other people because of the music genre. So yeah, that's mostly how it started.
Nice. Did you feel like you found like you had experience of found family when you met Doug and Warren in college?
Maybe I would word it that way. Yeah, because I think in college there was just more opportunities for me to do things outside of school that were really just my interest, pure interest. And I guess I met more like-minded people that way, and that's how I found more friends that I shared those interests in too. So yeah, I think college was definitely the place where I met more people through my interest.
Yeah, and it's one of those where it's like you feel like you're in your own bubble for a long
Mm.
time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you finally like meet people who have similar interests, and then you kind of expand on those where like you talk about your specific like quirks and qualities of what you like within K-pop, right?
Yes.
This
Yeah.
subgenre. And the Soju Talk Nation in general, well, at least speaking for myself, like I love your takes on like retro music, and you bringing
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
up to the top of the conversation here and there.
Hmm.
So I did want to ask you what draws you toward that retro sound, and what moments in your life do you remember when you hear certain sounds and feel certain vibes?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like for me, and maybe a lot of people, but the whole retro genre, like the '90s sound, '80s sound, maybe even early 2000s, um, it's a very interesting type of like nostalgia, I think. So very like I lived through it a little bit, but I was very young, so I can't remember it very well. But now looking back on that content and that sound, and then hearing it again, but like a remix or like a different take, like a very like odd nostalgia because I didn't quite live through all of that, but I really liked it and I can kind of remember it. So that's kind of what I get, and maybe that's why I like it so much.
Yeah, and it's one of those like in the modern era, right? You have a really
Mm.
good you have really good access to like the new and the old.
Yes, yeah, and I like that. I think it's good to have a mix of both.
Yeah, and to me like it's one of those where it kind of maintains or it's it kind of holds like a place in history, or like it keeps
Hmm.
those special
Hmm.
moments kind of alive in the consciousness of like fans and music lovers, and just like where it all started and how it kind of evolved and changed into where it is
Mm,
today.
yeah.
Yeah. So going off of kind of the retro vibe and new things from old things,
Mhm.
we have a very special group that has come back this week.
True.
Yes.
Yes.
Shiny's back.
Shiny's bag.
Yes. And to me, I actually went back and listened to all of Shiny's music videos.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And it was a really nice time capsule of like the certain
Mm-hmm.
eras, but also like how music has changed and evolved, and like what K-pop has done specifically that's different from Western
Right.
music, right? But I still do get a lot of vibes of like Michael Jackson inspired music and vocals and
Mm-hmm.
dancing, right? Um, and I did want to ask, just to get your general overview, but what does Shiny mean to you?
Hmm. Um, I think Shiny is a group that kind of was like the, how should I say it? Like the beginning, I guess, to really getting interested for me into the whole production side of the genre of K-pop and just pop idol music in Korea. Mostly because I was so into their discography, and I wanted to keep learning more and more. And because of that, I began to recognize names like producers, choreographers, like people that were involved in the whole production of this group. So I feel like it kind of opened the doors to that side of the industry, and it got me even more hooked on like, oh, this is really cool. Like all of these people that work together to create this product, this experience, the performance. Um, and I don't know. I think that's aside from like their great skills, their singing, their dancing, just like the artistry that comes along with the group and that I associate with them. I think they were the ones that were the beginning of recognizing that in other groups as well.
Yeah, and to me, like K-pop does a really nice job of bringing in fans that way, right? Where it makes you
Yes.
feel invested in not just like the music, but everything that goes on to how everything's made. And it's really interesting that SHINee is like your entry point into that, because it's, I mean, not to like date ourselves, but it was a long time ago. But it's one of those where it's changed so much. And I wanted to ask you, like, when you first got into kind of the behind the scenes and the production and the dance and choreography, like the artistry, like you said, what did you first notice that really kept you in that community, and how have you felt like that's changed over the years?
Well, I think for me, what was most grabbing or eye-catching about the group, and then about other groups in general, was the choreography, the performance aspect of the genre. And I guess SHINee was a good example and a good entry point, because they are very well known for their dances, very intricate, very sharp. And I was really impressed at the time, because I was not very used to that from Western artists or groups in general. So I think it was that, the performance aspect, the dancing, and for me.
Yeah, and then that's one thing that K-pop, I feel like, has done to differentiate itself from Western media and Western music, right? Where it's a very visual medium. We have like very much the music aspect of things, and we understand like the trainees and the singing, especially with SM with their power vocals. But I think SHINee was one of the first, if not like kind of the pioneers of that second gen movement, where it's like sharp precision dancing.
Yeah, and I feel like even now, like how that has progressed now, I feel like that the attention to the choreography, right, and the visual aspects has definitely increased over the years, like as far as I can notice. Like the rookies coming out now, and their skill level, their performance level it's really, really impressive, with knowing that they probably had a couple of years training, right? But actually being out there in the stage and performing, they're pretty brand new, but they're still so good. And so, I don't know, I feel like the level has definitely risen, and I feel like it's good in a way. I think when there's this idea of like, yes, we got to keep improving, you get really great content. So I'm glad. I think we've covered this in the show too, but I'm glad that the choreography has gone up. Maybe some other aspects have gone down a little, but I still feel like the quality overall has just gotten so good.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's the whole package of K-pop, right? Where it's the visual presentation, it's the performance, it's how the kids carry themselves on stage, because it's all part of like this whole like inclusionary medium. You mentioned that you feel like some aspects have gone down. Do you feel like, and I think that you did cover this in the podcast, but if you want to expand on it here, that because there's been such an emphasis on stage presentation, performance, visual, and especially dance, that some things like music have been less prioritized. So I guess like another way to set it up is, so take SM for example. They have a ton of groups, but they also have like a ton of songs, and it almost seems like those songs can be interchanged between different groups. Do you feel like that's a product of the fact that there's so much focus on dance and performance now?
I think sometimes, I won't say it always, it's something that I see in everybody now, but I feel like sometimes I do feel like sound is sometimes driven by trends more than a unique sound to each group. And I think we're noticing this too as well with both boy groups, girl groups. There tends to be like this overarching, like very popular trend in sound, and then a lot of groups go that direction, right? So I feel like it is more common now, but I don't know. I feel like there are good things and bad things about it, because you can always get different interpretations of the same sound, like different variations of the concept, and I think that's always interesting to see, like who does it this way or that. So yeah, it can be a little how to say, like a little too much if the sound seems to be like, yeah, we've heard this already. We can definitely see this in other groups, or other groups doing it too, but I don't think it's always bad. I think it allows for other people to try doing the same thing but differently in some aspects. So yeah, I feel like it does happen, but I don't think it's bad in general.
Yeah, and it does kind of go to like the strength of a company overall, right? Where it's like they
Yeah.
trust their artists enough where it's like, okay, you can take over this song perhaps that was meant for someone else, but we know that we can reverse engineer it in a way that fits your style best, and now you can do what you're known for. So in Shiny's
Right.
case with Don't Call Me,
Right.
I mean the song itself, like you guys had mentioned on this show about the song, right? But when
Yes.
I watch it, I'm like blown away that they're just so polished and refined.
Mm.
And like it just, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about how good they are as performers. And you did go into it a little bit on the show, but I kind of want to give you the floor here. What are your high points and some of your critiques about this comeback for Shiny?
Well, it's been a couple of days since it came out, so I've been looking at more of the live performances, and I haven't gotten to the full album. I know that a lot of people are giving more like, better, or I guess positive reviews for the B-sides, so I'm excited for that. But for this single in particular, I feel like I was a little bit thrown off because it wasn't the sound that I was expecting, and like we mentioned in the podcast, it was a little familiar, but not in a way that I thought was like particularly highlighting what I think is unique about Shiny. But I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's a bad song, and I think it might come to show like, hey, they're trying to find a different aspect of the group that they want to highlight now, or like a different sound that they want to try out. And I don't quite think they've figured out all of the their twist to that genre, but I can definitely see them doing it. I feel like it's possible for them to pull it off.
Yeah, and then it does feel like if you're a Shiny fan for however many number of years, like this feels like the biggest departure so far of their discography.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
Yes, just going off of like how long Shiny has been in the game and the types of changes they've had to their sound and songs, what have been your most memorable songs from Shiny, and then what do you consider their most cornerstone tracks? If, say for example, you had a new fan who wanted to get like the prototypical, like this is a Shiny song.
Oh, let's see. I think when I think of Shiny's discography in general, I kind of find like three or four eras where their sound was very consistent in between in those periods, and then it kind of shifts a little bit, and then it evolves into something else. So for me, my personal favorite, and the one that I get more nostalgia about, is their early days. So around debut to like 2010, 2011, when Lucifer came out. So that's around that time. Yeah, that's well, I found out about Shiny that same year when they were promoting Lucifer. So that was like the first song that I heard from them. And I'll be honest, I was not that into it because I was a little like, it was pretty intense. The dance was intense, the vocals were intense.
Yes.
So I was a little shocked. I wasn't sure if I liked it or not, but it definitely made an impression. So I kind of I mentioned this before too, but I kind of went back in their stuff. So I went back and searched up like their debut stuff and everything in between. And that's the sound that I really liked, which was more of the, what did they call it back then? The contemporary R&B sound that they had. Yeah, so that's probably my favorite era, just because it was like the beginning. They were establishing themselves. The choreography was a lot of it. A lot of the input was from Rino Nakasone, who is a Japanese choreographer, really well known for working in the U.S. with really popular artists, Gwen Stefani being one of them. But I don't know, I feel like everything that was going on with them, the collaborations that they were doing in the beginning, were really, really impressive for me.
Yeah, that's actually really cool that you went all the way back to Shiny
Yeah.
in 2008, right?
Yes.
Because to me, like K-pop, and this is like no knock on K-pop, but it's kind of like the trends of like globalization and how like media transfers. They've always
Yeah.
seemed to be one generation behind on entertainment. So like in the
Yeah, I can see that.
in the late 2000s, around like 2008, that sound was actually closer to like a 90s like boy group sound. But then there's that shift where somewhere in like the mid 2010s, Korea caught up, and they were like one on one now with like Western media and Western like music. There was one song in particular that I didn't realize when it came out, and I don't know about the timing specifically, but I saw the date on it. I think it was 2000. I want to say 2017. So it's One of One.
Yes.
And that's like the complete 90s retro that Bruno Mars did. That's now resurging in 2020, but they did it 4 years ago. Just like
they did.
How? Like I was just like so amazed. What are your memories about that song, and how does that song make you feel today?
To be honest, I feel like I really liked the song when it came out. I liked the 90s retro sound that they were going for. Or actually, the outfits were also really interesting because they were more like 70s outfits with the 90s sound, but it was nice. I liked it. And I feel like I don't realize until now, like, oh, like they were kind of ahead of the curve as far as like K-pop went for doing retro sounds. Because I think within the last couple of years, I feel like I really saw a lot of groups going back to that sound, and then I realized, oh wait, Shiny also did that, but it was like a couple years ago, and I don't know, I forget, like, oh, that happened. So yeah, I was also a little bit impressed, like, oh, I guess the shift in the genre now, it seems like they are maybe like almost a little bit ahead, maybe, as to like what might be super popular like worldwide sometimes. So I feel like it's really interesting how fast things are moving now.
Yeah, I mean that's such a great way to put it, where it's like, I mean, retrospectively, right? Like we don't really see like where Shiny was compared to like where everyone is today until like you really go back and like dig into like songs like that. Yeah, and it to me that's what kind of like always reminds me of how special Shiny is as far as like their impact on Korean music. But then also, if you really want to like translate that to like their impact to the rest of the world, they really could have been one of the groups that made that transference into like Western markets, given like a different opportunity, a different era. I did want to ask you a couple kind of more somber, like heavier things about the group, specifically about Jonghyun. And when do you remember where you were at in your life when you heard the news of his passing?
I was finishing my first semester of my junior year in college. Yes. So I was still in college at the time when I was finding out about what happened.
Yeah. Do you remember how it affected you and just your mood, kind of going into like that piece of news and then K-pop throughout that year?
Yeah, I think it was shocking news to me that like that had happened, but I also feel like there have been how should I say, like it wasn't necessarily something that was completely blindsiding people, because there have been talks of like mental health issues. I think Jonghyun had expressed before like he had dealt with depression and that sort of stuff. So I feel like the signs were kind of there, but it's always really shocking to hear those kind of news, and you wish it wasn't true. And I guess when I first heard the news, I guess I was kind of did not wanting to believe it. Like it felt like, like it this doesn't feel real. Like like trying to not think about it. Maybe like I think I took a little bit of a break. Like I couldn't really listen to any of their stuff for a little bit because it made me like feel very upset. Like I don't know. It was a lot of emotions at the time.
Yeah, no, I felt very similarly. I remember specifically, so I was already working at that time, And my coworker had come in, and she just said, "Did you hear the news?" And at that point, I wasn't that big into K-pop yet, but like she knew like I liked a lot of genres of music, and I just had no idea what she meant. And then she started talking about it. I was like, oh, SHINee is a really big name. Like they're really like important and popular in K-pop. So then I looked into it a little bit more later that day, and then I realized like just kind of the impact and what that meant, and all the people that he knew. Because I guess back then, to me, it felt like K-pop was a lot more connected. Like all the different groups and artists and idols knew each other a little bit more. So it did affect me, and it's one of those where I distinctly remember that day where I just like came into work and my coworker just like had a look of like disbelief, and like the moment was very surreal. Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like there was a general feeling of like not believing like this was happening, and I also feel like the amount of coverage that it had was like both surprising but also like kind of upsetting, because like wow, like, I'm happy that people know who they are and who he is and all of that, but I also feel like I wish it wasn't this type of news, that was getting this much coverage. I wish it was something more positive, something that was good, something good for the group. But I don't know, it was mixed feelings, I think, for me, like hearing about it, like the coverage that it had, like in the West as well, like different news articles that were coming out, like the New York Times. Both shocking and also like, I don't know, a lot of mixed feelings for sure.
Yeah, no, and I do remember like what you mean about like the New York Times and like Western coverage of like K-pop and just like Asian culture in general, right? Where it's still, even though like the United States is like something like 30% like Asian and Asian immigrants, it's one of those where it's like, oh, like it's still like a distant culture, a distant like set of people. It's like we don't like necessarily see them as like they can be similar to us. When like mental health and the pressures of being in the spotlight and under a microscope should be something that most cultures, especially westernized entertainment cultures, can't empathize with. And
right.
Just remembering the type of coverage and how it was so devoid and kind of separated from emotion kind of rubbed me the wrong way of trying to find out more information from like news outlets here in the United States. But yeah, it was a very challenging like experience, but I think going through their discography now and kind of seeing the songs that happen afterwards, it does at least help me turn the page and to see where the members ended up and how they kind of dealt with it through music. So the two songs I wanted to highlight were Good Evening and Our Page.
Yes.
So Good Evening was the first song back as 4, and that was a very fun song. I remember it being like disco, deep house, and then Our Page was a very direct message to their friend, right? The friend
Correct,
that is no longer with them. How do you feel like the era after Jonghyun has become for SHINee, and I guess what are your hopes moving forward now with this group?
To be honest, I feel like knowing that they were going to continue, I had a little bit of mixed reaction as well, because I kind of feel like I will always, and I think a lot of fans will always see the group as 5, right? And they will always feel like maybe something is missing, right? In their performance, in their music. So I was a little hesitant. I was a little worried as to what was going to happen next to the group, what kind of sound they were going to try to go for. And then when they came out with their Story of Light trilogy, I felt a little sense of relief, because I felt like, okay, this is still SHINee. Like they're still doing what I think they do best. And the sound that they had with Good Evening, which I think like the lyrics and like the performance aspect of it was so meaningful. Like I'm really glad that they did that song for that comeback, because I don't know, I feel like the meaning behind it, the impact that it had was it just expressed a lot of what was going on at that time. But yeah, overall, I feel like that whole trilogy that they had, it was a sense of relief knowing that they were gonna keep going forward and it was gonna be okay. Like the sound was still gonna be fine. And even if they changed the sound, I feel like just knowing that they could do it was reassuring. And I feel like also the another track that I feel like kind of was maybe a little message to the fans, like don't worry, it's kind of it's we're still five, we're still moving on, we're still shiny. Was oh my god, I can't remember the title. It's the last one in their
Is it Countless?
Countless, I think. Wait, is it Countless? No, I think it's.
Or is it,
I just remember the lyrics. It's like "Lock You Down," and it features Jonghyun's vocals in it, and it's not like a very serious song. It's quite poppy, and I don't know. I feel like hearing it after knowing that everything had happened before, just kind of had that feeling of reassurance for me of like this is gonna work out. If they I'm glad that they wanted to continue doing this, and I saw some reviews where they said that it was their way of also moving on and kind of coping, continuing to perform and doing what they have been doing so far. So I feel like it was a good sign for me.
Yeah, it's. And I'm glad. I'm thankful that you shared like your experience, and it really helps me also connect. And I really just want to say I appreciate that you kind of opened up a little bit and kind of a peek into how Shiny has been a part of your life. I know like certain like this part of the history specifically is a little bit heavier, but I know that we're also able to kind of zoom out and see them as a whole group and everything. And kind of just to wrap up Shiny a bit, they well, K-pop in general, right? It's one of those mediums that's very specific and unique where they want fans to almost come into their lives as like the friend next door, as someone like, hey, come over,
yes.
like we want to include you. It's a very like well-connected piece of art with the creators and then the people that are going to be supporting them. How do you feel like K-pop has informed your personal life and kind of your perspectives on how you navigate the world?
I feel like since we touched about like the fan aspect, right? I guess I never before K-pop I was not exposed to that sort of fan culture before. So there's very much sense of like unity with the fans and then the group. So like unity within the fandom and then unity with the group. That kind of level I was not very familiar with, but I think I kind of grown to appreciate it. There's some good moments and there's some bad moments with the whole fan culture, but I think the positives that I found from it were just like this, like I mentioned, this sense of unity and a lot of like support, I feel like. And I think it's so interesting that it extends to stuff outside of just the group. Like even just talking about like the podcast and the Discord, when I see all of the people that interact with us and with each other, and knowing that like maybe this is their point of interest, right? K-pop is the common ground where they can all talk, but it can also grow from that, like get to know other people and more interests and find maybe other common interests. So I don't know, I find it very, very interesting, and I guess it just shows how the age of like the internet and like social media, how it connects everyone. And just as it can seem a little toxic at times, there's also good things that should be highlighted that come with it as well.
Really well put. Really well put. Yes, definitely like there is going to be conflict on the internet, conflict with the way people interact. It's kind of just human nature. But I think the thing that makes K-pop most special, and you said it so brilliantly, is that it brings people together. And specifically with this podcast, right, where honestly, like I spent like years trying to find a podcast that I cared about and connected with regards to K-pop, and it wasn't until 2019 19 that I found you guys, and it's just one of those like, wow, like I
Wow.
can't imagine I can't imagine another place that I would rather go to. Not
Oh,
only
thank
like
you.
hear you
And
guys
we're
talk.
glad. We're glad you
Yeah.
guys are here.
No, it's great. I mean, I do want to give you guys like so much credit because you have like built this community of people who are free to express themselves, but then you guys are so involved, and it gives us a sense of like realism to like the fandom and the culture, but also like an ability to interact and I don't know, feel engaged. So I do want to thank you for that, Nita. You are
Oh no, thank you.
you are awesome. Yeah, do you have any closing thoughts? Just anything on your mind about Doug and Warren? You want to pour some tea on?
No tea pouring this time. Just thank you for having me. It's been really fun, and I don't know. I like how you guys are bringing up these conversations, going a little bit deeper because I think there's a lot of good fun stuff about K-pop and the performance and the groups, but you could also talk about more. I guess not necessarily serious, but I guess more intricate aspects about the industry, and then aspects of the industry that also tie back into just real life, like your personal life. So I'm glad that a lot of people get access to that as well.
Yeah, and again, you guys are definitely the vehicle and captains for all of this conversation. So I want to thank you again.
Thank you.
I want to thank Doug, Warren, and Anita for joining me on these memorable conversations. Subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify or your preferred podcast platform, and continue the conversation on the Soju Talk K-pop podcast Discord. I'm Crispy, and this has been the Soju Sessions.